Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Trumful Reads, and in this video, we're going to be doing my favorite fantasy reads of 2018. And since 2018 was kind of the first year I actually started reading fantasy or fiction or whatever in general, it was kind of hard for me to limit it down because I think I read like 40 or 50 something, 50 something fiction books, which is quite a lot for me considering, like I said, I've never really read fantasy before. So it was kind of hard for me to pick which ones because pretty much this entire section of my library did not exist in January 1 of 2018. There was one book on there. We'll get to that one in a little bit. So this includes kind of like some standalone stuff. Well, actually, they're all part of I guess, a series or collection or something. But yeah, we'll just go over what I got two runners up and then my top three for the year of 2018. So let's start with the first runner up. And it's Brian McClellan's Sins of Empire, and this is the first book of the second trilogy in the Powder Mage universe, the Gods of Blood and Powder. And I thought this one was tremendous. Part of it might have been because it was like one of my first fantasy reads, but I just thought the balance between the different like kind of magical elements, which didn't overpower the story, were really well done. There's Nax, Powder Mages, and Privileged, but they all have kind of different little quirks and stuff, and it's not like so over the top that it's just non-stop magic all the time, which is something I enjoy because I just don't like when magic kind of takes over the story. But it's set in kind of like a Napoleonic era technology-wise, obviously flintlock fantasy and stuff, which is a subgenre of fantasy I really enjoy. This is, like I said, the first book in the second trilogy. Don't ask me why I read that one first, but after reading that one and loving it, my wife got me the first trilogy, the Powder Mage trilogy, Chronicles of Blood, Crimson Campaign, and Autumn Republic. She bought me these for Valentine's Day of last year, and these ones are autographed editions, which I think is really cool. The only autographed books that I have. I've read the first two of that first trilogy so far. I need to get to the Autumn Republic definitely. And while I definitely enjoyed them, I didn't think they were quite as good, or as polished, I should say, as the first Sins of Empire. So once I finish that, I need to get the second book in the Gods of Blood and Powder, which is Wrath of Empire, I believe, which is good. That means he's obviously improving as a writer and kind of honing his technique and stuff. So I think that's definitely a good thing. And so that's the first runner-up, and the second runner-up is kind of cheating. Is the complete Chronicles of Conan. Part of it is that cover, which is pretty cool. Not quite as big a fan. I wish kind of Conan's helmet was instead of this like weird, almost like Tarzan looking Conan right there. But this is the complete Robert E. Howard original stuff, which is really cool. And like I said, I had read some Conan before, and this was literally the only fantasy-ish book that I owned before I started BookTube and started reading fantasy. My friend Wyatt gave this to me for Christmas like one year. And I've read a couple of short stories, but I had this past year I read through everything, and there's definitely some real gems in the complete Chronicles of Conan. Some obviously are definitely not as good as some others, especially some of the kind of earlier. Some of the earlier stuff's kind of weak, and then a lot of the middle stuff is kind of repetitive and everything. But there are quite a few that I really like. I like Tower of the Elephant, Rose in the House, Queens of the Black Coast, Beyond the Black River. There's a bunch of really good stuff in here. Just if you guys like sword and sorcery or pulp fantasy, pulp fiction type stuff, definitely check out Robert E. Howard's original Conan stuff. Alright, so there are my two runners up there. And now for the top three, I definitely have a clear winner. The next two are kind of tied for second and third. We're just going to start with Glenn Cook's Chronicles of the Black Company. And this is an omnibus edition out of the 9 or 10 books that he has. I've read this omnibus so far, which covers the first three books, The Black Company, Shadows Linger, and The White Rose. I liked the first one. I didn't think it was like anything like super spectacular, but I definitely really enjoyed it. And things just picked up with Shadows Linger and The White Rose, because the plot structure of each of the three books is like so different from each other. It's not like reading the same thing, even though it's set obviously in the same world and follows a lot of the same characters. But the narrator of these books, which is kind of the battlefield surgeon of the Black Company, Croker, his kind of just deadpan, witty humor. I just really enjoy it, the way that character kind of narrates the stories and everything. But I like Shadows Linger and The White Rose also have different points of view, characters that tell about half the story as well, and they're each different. And there's, like I said, this universe is so. This is like the original grimdark. Like, it's just so bleak. Bleak is like the perfect kind of word for the world that this is set in. I just highly enjoy it. As like grimdark fantasy, kind of low fantasy stuff. I'm definitely going to be reading this entire series, which I said I think is 9 books, and I'm not sure if Port of Shadows, which came out last year, I don't know if that's like a 10th book or another kind of one in between some of the books. But anyways, that is my 3rd favorite fantasy series that I started in 2018. Alright, and next up is kind of maybe not a controversial choice, but I'm going with the Coldfire Trilogy by C.S. Friedman, which is Black Sun Rising, When True Night Falls, and Crown of Shadows. Just look at those covers. I just think they're super well done. This artwork is done by Michael Whelan, which is the same guy that does Brandon Sanderson's stuff as well. Oh, I don't know. I'm just like trying to set. Well, of course, I'll just hold Black Sun Rising because it was the first one. But this like science fantasy kind of mashup is just so interesting, I guess. There's lots of problems. The first one has a super choppy, rough start. It's kind of disjointed and everything. And the end of the trilogy is kind of maybe not underwhelming, but it's just so odd. I should say, I guess, if that makes sense. It's just very odd. It's powerful but odd. And like I said, there's some kind of like writing tropes. It feels a little soap opera-ish-y, especially in the first one, not so much in the second and third ones. And I believe the second book, When True Night Falls, is the best of the 3. But it's just such an interesting, like, concept, I guess, for this like world that's taking place. It takes place on a planet called Urna after some colonists from Earth and kind of like the deep future kind of colonize another planet. But then there's sort of a regression in technology and everything, and then you end up with this like low fantasy-ish kind of universe, except you still have kind of like some modern culture stuff like restaurants and like shops and everything that feel like contemporary, but you're fighting with like swords and like primitive guns and everything. But anyways, the magic system, I don't even know if you call it a magic system. The magic of this world is so vague, but it's really interesting. It's like part of the environment in a way, almost like kind of like the like wind currents and stuff, except it's like kind of unseen magic currents. But like I said, it's so hard to explain, and plus you got there's like 2 main characters. We have Gerald Tarrant, who is literally, he's not even really an anti-hero. He's literally just the bad guy, but doesn't want like a worse bad guy. He kind of has like just like all these kind of distorted, I don't know, I can't even explain it. I would have to almost do like literally just like an hour-long lecture trying to like pick apart Gerald Tarrant's like motivations for everything. But let's just say he's really powerful, started his own religion around himself on this planet, basically became quasi-immortal, kind of thought his religion sucked, kind of doesn't follow it, but he's still like proud of the church he started in that world, and he doesn't really want all that bad for people, but he kind of just wants to do his own thing. Unfortunately, his own thing kind of requires him to prey on the terror of people, particularly like young women, not in a physical sense, just kind of like mentally, just like feeding off their like fear and terror, literally. That's kind of how he survives. So yeah, a really complicated character, but deep down inside he kind of has like a noble cause-ish. And he's paired up with Damien Kilcannon Rice, who is kind of a square, but he's kind of like a really rough and tumble warrior priest guy thing. I don't know why I said thing, but that's kind of what he is. Basically going off fighting and killing all these aberrations and everything. But alright, I know I'm like just rambling on about the Coldfire Trilogy. Like I said, it has a lot of problems. I found it really enjoyable, just really interesting. A lot of deep concepts that are kind of like hidden throughout the book. Just the 3 books, just some really powerful stuff going on if you like read between the lines and kind of what's going on in this timeline. Just thought it was really cool, and that's why the Coldfire Trilogy is either 2 or 3 of my favorite for 2018. Plus, it was, I think, I only read 2 complete series in 2018 that I started in 2018. So it had to have been pretty good for that. And lastly, definitely my number 1 favorite series that I've started in 2018 that I definitely need to catch up on is Scott Lynch's Gentleman Bastard series. And I know none of my covers match, and even my third one that I haven't read yet is a hardcover edition that doesn't match either. So there's that. Apparently there was like a printing problem. Like there is a tower in the background, but it's kind of hard to see, even like with the right lighting. It's just like kind of odd. And then I think I bought this one off eBay because I wanted a hardcover edition. It was like listed under hardcover in the listing, but it obviously is not. So at least I got it for free, I suppose. But definitely do want to get a matching set of these ones. But for Scott Lynch to make me enjoy these like rogue thief type characters, just demonstrates how awesome these books are, because that is like the type of character, like when you pick your job or class or whatever, it's like my least favorite for like a fantasy setting is like kind of the rogue class. But the cons and plots and just tricks and stuff of the Gentleman Bastards, particularly Jean and Locke-Lamora, are just so well done. I don't know. There's nothing I can like say except the characterization is just the highest standard I've seen so far in fantasy. And the characters are definitely what I look for in fantasy, more so than like the magic system or the world building, anything like that. Characters are what I read fantasy for. And like I said, just the best characters I read in 2018. And overall, it's just a lot of fun. Kind of the world building is really good, but like especially the dialogue between the characters is just really well done. I can't really say enough about it. And I highly encourage you guys to check out the Gentleman Bastard series. We got The Lies of Locke-Lamora, Red Seas Under Red Skies, The Republic of Thieves, and then hopefully Thorn of Emberlane comes out whenever Scott Lynch is ready to finish writing it. Just really love this series. This would be what I would recommend to people who want a fantasy recommendation. If they haven't read it, definitely go check this one out. So there you guys have it. Those are the 5 series-ish author things for fantasy that I read in 2018 that I just thought were better than all the other ones. And like I said, I did read quite a few, I think 40, I can't remember if it was 45 or 55 different fantasy books in 2018, which like I said, totally different for me. So I'm just trying out tons of different genres, tons of different authors, different kind of eras of fantasy and stuff, just to see what I like. If you have any really good fantasy recommendations that you think I will like based on these or what you've seen in some of my past videos, definitely leave some comments down below. I'd be glad to talk to you about them. And always remember, whatever you read, read victoriously.